Do churches require a different kind of communication than your best friends? Does your family require a different kind of communication than your prayer partners? Think in terms of audience. If you know your audience, it will help you frame your communications appropriately. All right? It's kind of like Paul said, being in season and out of season. And I become all things to all people, though, so by some means I may save some. You got to become flexible. You got to become a bit of a chameleon because you're dealing with 60, 80, 120, 300 different people who have their own sets of values, their own ideas of what's good and bad, their own things that motivate them, and their own circumstances that they're wrestling with besides your relationship with you. All right? So, who are you writing to or who are you communicating with is key. Then there's the 4 I's. Remember, inform, inquire, involve, inspire. How do I do that for this group? How do I do that for this individual? How do I make that work? All right? Let's keep flying. Some content starters for you to think about. You don't always start with the question, gee, do I have anything to say this month? Do I have anything to say? Make a series of statements, some content starters, so if you hit a dry spell, you can always go to that list and say, okay, this time I'm going to do this, all right? Say thank you, convey an important result, affirm the value of their partnership, point toward a future goal, ask for help with a special need. Make a list of these things and kind of keep track. All right, well, this letter did this, and this letter did this, and you won't run dry. I told you a little while ago that every month I had to do 42 thank you letters to donors for CBN. Every month, 42. How many different ways can you say thank you? When people are essentially giving to the same thing. They're giving monthly gift to Middle East Television and the Ministry of Middle East Television. All right, multiply that times 12. Let's see, 24 different thank yous for that same thing during the course of the given year. You've got to find different ways to get in, get out, and so forth. Think about the diversity of ideas that you can use to make that happen, and it will make a huge difference to you. Those content starters are important, and I would encourage you to develop your own list of things that you can use that will help you get started on your monthly communications. Why please your partners? There are advantages of making sure that your prayer and financial partners are motivated by your communications with them. What are some of them? They stick with you. We have a term in the development world that we use. It's called continuity. Continuity. We want people to continue with us year after year after year after year. That is the greatest advantage that we have. Not only continuity, however, but involved, inspired partners. Why? Because if we have to come back and raise additional support, the better involved they are, and the more inspired they are in terms of our partnership together, the more willing they might be to help us raise the additional support we need. The more willing they might be to introduce us to their friends, or to their churches, or to their Sunday school people, or to their business partners, etc., etc., etc. If we delight our partners, it's one of those things, you want to keep the fire burning, you pass it on. You pass it on, all right? And I've shared numerous times with some of my friends, acquaintances, business associates, etc., the people that I think are really doing a fantastic job in their ministry assignments. Why? Because it's blessed me, it's blessed my wife, it's blessed my family, and I want my partners, my friends, my associates to get some of that blessing as well. You want to maintain your support? Well, bless and delight your partners, because they'll expand that circle if you really need it and you ask them to do so. All right? Caroline, would you mind passing out that first letter? I want to spend the last part of our time. We've got 15 minutes left before I said we'd be done. We'll be done at 3:30. Would you mind please passing out that, no, the long one. The long one. Yeah, the long one. Bring those things back. You can't have those back.
You have to share these, Jeff.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody have one. So
Yep.
every
Every
person
two people,
here.
every other person, please grab one of these. I'm going to ask you to share I want to show you an example or two of some things that might be examples of good or bad or whatever. And we're going to do a couple of little exercises here related to some of the principles that we've talked about and so forth. You should have a 14-inch letter here with the logo of World at Heart up at the top, all right? Now I want to spend a little bit of time with you in teams talking about this, okay? Take a moment or two. Does every other person have one of these things? So you can at least see off of each other's paper, etc.? We want to talk about this in relation to some of the things that we've discussed here. So take a moment or two to read that together. Then I'm going to ask you some questions that together you can help respond to, okay? All right, you should be just about finishing up on that right now. What I want to ask you to do is respond to a couple of questions, okay? And please feel free to answer as teams. Now then I'm going to ask you as teams to make a couple suggestions about what we might be able to do with this letter. First of all, let me ask you this. Does this look familiar to you at all?
Yes,
Why, Pat?
I've heard it. Different names, different places,
All right.
a million times.
Would this be kind of a typical letter?
Yeah,
All right. All right. And by typical, there's a variety of elements in here that make it typical, correct? All right. Yes, there's some themes there. Yes, there's some asks there. Yes, there's a tear-off device at the bottom and all those kinds of things, all right? Let me ask you this. How many of you liked what you read in this for one reason or another? Okay. A pretty good number of you. Let me ask you this. Somebody volunteer. What's the objective of this letter?
$2,000.
Well, let's make it a little broader, a little more understanding.
Give you information about what's happening in the ministry as per Jeannie's story, or Janae, whatever her name is,
Right.
and to raise money.
And okay, part of it is fundraising. All right. So it has multiple objectives.
And to say thank you.
Say again.
And to say thank you.
And to say thank you. There's a number of elements in here that we've talked about, correct? Is this a personal letter?
No.
Why?
Because
What makes it impersonal?
it's typed.
Say it again.
It's typed, it's a form.
Well, it's a form.
It says dear support team.
It says, Dear Support Team. All right. When you say Dear Support Team, what does that do to me as a reader?
I'm one of many.
I'm one of many. All right. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
If it's one-on-one, it's a bad thing.
All right.
I think it can be good because the
Nice to not
point-
neglect.
I think it can be good because she's saying, look at what we have all accomplished together. This girl came to Christ because of what we all have done.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
Potentially it could be.
It's kind of on the fence there, isn't it? It uses some of the language of partnership individually, but it's directed to a mass audience, right? It really is. And so as a result of that, it has less impact than if it said, Dear Jeff and Lynn, that's my wife, by the way, Dear Jeff and Lynn, it would have more meaning to me, and I would see myself more in that than as part of a group that's making a difference, correct? Now, it doesn't hurt me to know that I'm part of a group. That's okay. That can be referred to, and I feel all right about that. I know I'm not doing it alone. My $100 a month or $50 a month or whatever isn't responsible for all of this. I realize that. But you see how tweaking some elements could make a difference here. What else about just the form of this that is problematic? Say it again, Marlon.
There are no pictures.
Well, there's no pictures to it. There's nothing there that draws me in visually, right? It's margin to margin.
It's to business like.
It's a business letter. In 7th grade, did we learn the difference between writing a business letter and writing a personal letter? Everybody learned that, right? What's the difference between a business letter and a personal letter?
Indent with a personal
We indent. We indent. We set off our paragraphs by indenting the first line, correct? Right. We maybe have a little larger margins than this has. And what else do we do? Do we justify everything this way? No. Where do we usually put our in? We move the signature and so forth over here. Everybody learned that, right?
Does everybody do that now that we
I
have
was gonna say, haven't the
computers?
standards changed?
Nobody does
No.
that I know.
The standards
In
have
my
not
book,
changed.
I see indented letters on legal documents.
Yeah, they've changed. Yeah, I think it has.
I think it's changed because everyone has computers and
Yeah.
everyone does whatever they feel like.
Everyone does whatever they feel like, and the English teachers among us hate it.
My English teacher is a supporter, so if you want stress, write your prayer letter.
Yeah, baby. They'll say you split your infinitive in that
She
sentence.
wrote and said she was impressed once I had this one.
Well,
It's a split.
The point of it is that you can make a letter like this look more personal and feel more personal, even if it has to be a letter. Now, this one is kind of made up, all right? I've got one here that I receive on a regular basis from one of the people that I've supported over years and years and years. First of all, it comes, in this kind of an envelope. Second of all, it's always one side, one page, but at least it uses indented paragraphs. It has a lasered signature on the bottom of it.
He's redeemed.
And what can I say? I've known this guy for years and years. He used to work for me. I support him, for years and years and years. And it's still always the same. Once in a while, at Christmas time, we'll get a little handwritten PS on there. It says, "Hey, Jeff and Lynn, hope you're doing well." Bang.
Merry Christmas.
Even with this over this, there are differences that matter. One thing that matters to me is the fact, all right, this says the organization as well as the person within the organization. Remember I talked yesterday about the branding issue and how critical that can be to us? This one doesn't. This is all about Jim and Diane. It doesn't have a link to the organization at all. And I have to remember sometimes, who is it that they're with? What is it that they're doing? Why is it that they're doing it? And why am I still supporting them? All right? The power of the brand makes a difference. The brand doesn't exist sometimes, even though it's a personal letter and says, "Dear Jeff and Lynn," I know that it was an assembly line operation, Why? Because they got a lasered signature on there.
Jeff,
Yes, go ahead.
even the ask isn't personal.
The ask isn't personal.
Is our staff is in need, not I am in need.
Yeah.
Or if everyone, instead of you, if
Yeah.
you would just pledge.
The most important word in fundraising is you. 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 We tend to collectivize our teams into this giant group, and we write to all of you. And we get letters like that says, "To everyone on my support team." Why not say to you? And when I ask you, not everyone. Why? It becomes much more meaningful here. These are subtle things that can make a big difference. Subtle things that can make a big difference. And the fact that visually, both of these are really kind of bad is not a problem if I get other things from these people that visually draw me into the ministry, show me some of the people that they're working with, and help me understand what it is that I am doing as a partner with them. I like the personal touch, but I know that it's not really personal because, I know about mail merge. And I know that my name and address gets put on these things. The fact that it's a lasered signature kills it every time. And it's all I see from them. It's always 5 paragraphs on one side of the page, no photographs, no nothing to give me a visual element of what's going on. Do I have their prayer card? Well, I got their magnet on the refrigerator. All right. But it makes a difference when you start considering not only what you communicate, but how you communicate as well. And all I'm suggesting is that a steady dose of either this or this can be problematic. Let me share a couple of things with you that are a little bit different. And why a missionary is doing a better job as far as my relationship with them are concerned. All right? Here is a sample of a newsletter, okay? It is a newsletter, a prayer/newsletter, all right? And what's different, all right? Is it mass-produced? Yes, all right, it's mass-produced. But what about it is a little more engaging?
Pictures.
Pictures, all right? There's pictures. And what kind of pictures? Well, there's pictures of places and people and the person who this happens to be, all right? But there's more to it than that, and I'll share that with you in a minute. Here's another one of them. Does it look a little different? Yeah, it looks a little different. It's not the same template, and it actually continues on the back of these things, by the way. But look, here's different elements that draw you in. If you happen to be one of those people that collects these things and puts them in a binder and flips through them, there's interest there. It doesn't all look the same every month. There's some variety there that draws me in and makes me interested in what's going on. In this particular case, this person works in East Asia, which is a pseudonym for China, you know, and that kind of thing. But, you know, there's people on there, and there's stories on there, and there's messages on here that make a difference. And the message is what I want to focus on next. Look at, and I don't know that you can read this, but I'll read it to you. Okay, this is the first of these letters, the one on the left, where Violet's story is prominent in all of this. Let me read to you what she says. Happy Thanksgiving. She doesn't say, dear partner, or whatever. It's just first an initial reading, all right? Happy Thanksgiving. First of all, she's serving a campus crusade for Christ in East Asia. All right, that's always on there, so we know what it is that she's doing. We know where she is, etc. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a blessed holiday and that you are encouraged in giving thanks for all things. When I think about what I'm thankful for this year, these things top my list. You. Your prayers and support make it possible for me to be here in East Asia. Believe me, your ministry is accomplishing much for the kingdom of God. Thank you for your commitment to me and to bringing truth to East Asia's university students. How powerful a statement is that? How powerful a statement is that? Oh my gosh. Lots of the things that we've been talking about right up front and center in that letter. Right? Does that make a difference in how I perceive the rest of the information that she has there? Yeah. There's visual interest here. She uses bullet statements, things that will gather my attention. You know, we tend to read in terms of headlines, cut lines, photos, captions, all those kinds of things. Our eyes have something to anchor to. And right off the bat, she's saying, the first anchor I want you to see here is that it is all about you. Not so much all about me. Okay? Is this a general newsletter, prayer letter type of thing? Yeah, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. But you know what? That's not all that we get from Sarah. Periodically, you know, we'll get something shaped like this. It's new, it's different, it's got multiple stamps on there. Real live stamps with postmarks. And, you know, it's hand addressed. Does that get my attention? Sure it does. I open it up and guess what? Here's a little something inside. A pretty print, a pretty card that shows a scene from the area where she happens to be. It's hard to put photographs of people in there because they're concerned about identities and those sorts of things. But here's a nice thing that can be a visual reminder of where we're involved and where we're invested in. And here's a nice card inside that is handwritten. It has a nice little Chinese stamp on the bottom of it that says something. And then it says interesting stuff here, you know, dear Jeff and Lynn, thank you so much for continuing your financial support of our ministry to international students together. I like that statement. Your prayers and generosity the past 2 years have meant so much to me, and it is a privilege to partner with you. Power statement, power communications there. Thank you for investing in me and for valuing the power of the gospel reaching students from over the world, in particular in my area of service. I look forward to updating you on how God works in this ministry once our support team is complete. I really enjoyed my time in Colorado, referring back to a visit that she paid and time that we spent together, etc., etc., etc. When you take these kinds of things and doing them exclusively, they begin to lose their savor over time because it's always the same, and I know what's going to be there, etc. When you pepper your communications with variety, and you work in a phone call, and you work in a visit when it's possible, suddenly there's a dynamic in the relationship that is different and more meaningful because we recognize the effort that she's making to have a strong relationship with us as a family and as part of her team.